Hello, everyone, and welcome to Insight Media's new podcast series entitled Economic Insight. I am excited to be here today with Omar Elkhatib. Could you please tell us a little bit about your role at the Vision Council and what you cover there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations, and I lead our Government Relations team that works on the Hill in Washington, D.C. to take the issues that matter most to our members at the Vision Council and relay that to the members of Congress on the Hill.
Fantastic. Sounds like a much needed focus right now, for sure.
Very much so these days, yes.
Definitely. So I'd just like to first kick off with our podcast series. This particular section of our Economic Insight podcast series is going to focus on tariffs and how tariffs are affecting the industry, how they're affecting eye care practitioners and the practices around the country. I just want to start off with a statistic from the Vision Council, a recent survey that you did on tariffs and how they're affecting the industry, which was really one of the most fascinating studies I've read because I'm so curious about this area. One of the stats that stuck out, 91% of vision care providers report tariffs have most strongly impacted wholesale prices, which have increased for them. So all but 9% said, yes, this is affecting my business, it's affecting my pricing, and I'm seeing the effects here right at home in my own business. So Omar, I just want to ask you a couple of quick questions on this front to get a little bit more of an understanding in layman's terms for our audience, kind of what's happening here, how is affecting the industry, which products are being affected the most and whatnot. So all these complexities of the tariffs aside, and certainly things have changed quite a bit from month to month and week to week with the tariffs, but can you please describe in layman's terms how the overall tariff situation is affecting our industry as a whole?
Yeah, so you mentioned it. Early on this year, there was a lot of unpredictability, right? You could wake up one day, there was something about tariffs, wake up the next day, it's completely changed. And that was in the heart of the trade war that was going on. There was a lot of back and forth, rates were changing all the time, a lot of uncertainty. It's kind of, obviously with the negotiation deadlines hitting, it's kind of gotten more certain since then. People kind of have a better idea. But with what's happening with the tariffs right now is, the reality is we like to be upfront with our members because it affects their bottom line and their businesses. The reality is that yes, the tariffs have gone up and it is going to cost, it is going to force goods to go up in cost. And you read that statistic. It's a staggering number, but it does make sense when you look at the numbers of the tariffs and that
Certainly.
Wholesale products will go up. And so we want to relay that to our members so that they know what to expect. We really want to set that expectation. And so that's kind of where we are.
So you're hearing it's affecting your members, and then obviously it's kind of, as these numbers for the 91% number shows, it's rolling down, then affecting the practitioners as well.
Yeah, it's going to have a ripple effect, possibly, depending on how the different components of this supply chain react to the tariffs. Whether they can either eat the tariffs themselves, eat the cost, they can negotiate with their vendors to maybe get a lower rate, or they can pass that cost down to the consumer. So there's kind of three variables there, and so it depends on the individual business. If they can bear the cost, that's different than someone who can't bear the cost. There's different decisions there to be made.
Certainly, yeah. So everyone has to make a decision about that. So which particular optical products are seeing the most significant effects from the tariffs currently?
Yeah, so the bulk of the business is done from China. So primarily sunglasses, frames, plastic frames, non-plastic frames. We're seeing those be the ones most affected, with sunglasses actually being the most affected by those. And again, it goes back to because when you're sourcing it from the country that's kind of been at the center of all this, they'll be the most affected by that. Whereas maybe the least affected products would be ones that have more diversity in where you can get it from. So like lenses, for example, there's a little bit more, you can get it from maybe the EU or someplace else that has a lower rate, for example. So there's a little bit more less affected than the ones that are primarily coming from China.
Definitely. Okay. And so with products that aren't affected, as you're kind of mentioning, which particular optical products would you say are the least affected in the current climate?
I don't want to say they're not affected,
Because everything's affected.
Yeah, everything's affected, and again, it comes down to the business. So it might affect business A differently than it might affect business B. But if you're looking at actual rates, I would say again, like contact lenses or lenses might be, if we're looking at the number. But yeah, again, it goes back to kind of how everyone reacts to the tariffs.
Certainly, for sure. And, I would imagine, as you're saying, right, each practice has to make their own decision. Certainly each manufacturer has to make their own decision. Am I going to pass this cost right on to my customers? And then the practice has to decide, am I passing that on to my patients, right? But do you think, so maybe that it's a tough question to answer, but do you think that we will see changes inevitably in consumer patient purchasing patterns because of this?
We could. We're seeing that spending is kind of relatively the same or even increased, but the amount that is being purchased has decreased. So people might forego an eye exam. Maybe they'll think twice, do I need to go in now? Should I wait? They might rethink about that second pair of eyeglasses or sunglasses that they need. They might just go for what the necessities are to get through the day. So that's impacted there. It's just purchasing power decisions come down to the consumer. But again, if it's whether the costs are passed down to the consumer, they'll react to it, how they react to it.
Certainly.
Yeah.
That's great. And this is my last question, is the wild card question, right? How do you see, or how do you think tariffs will play out? Do you think we'll see some stabilization now through the rest of the year, or we don't know?
I think when it comes to China, there's that November 10th deadline. That's going to be a big thing. So either the rates remain the same, or they might go back up to the 34% as opposed to the 10% now. So with China, there's a little bit more uncertainty there. It could go up or down. With the other countries, we've seen, obviously there's more certainty now because they've negotiated their deals. Those are kind of set in stone. Now for the remainder of the year, they might not change, but maybe going into next year, whatever it may be, they could go down. Because remember, this is a trade war that's still going on. There's still negotiations. And so if another country shows this administration that they're willing to maybe invest more in the United States, they can have that conversation and maybe bring down their rate more. So some optimism there that it could possibly come down, because the negotiations are ongoing. But
certainly
for the remainder of 2025, I think we're pretty kind of set with what we expect.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we're going into a midterm year next year. And so maybe members are less hesitant to react to the tariffs, depending on their district or whatnot. And so a lot of variables to consider. But for the remainder of 2025, I think we kind of have an idea of where we're going. But that November 10th deadline will be crucial.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. Well, I certainly appreciate you sitting down with us today. This is very helpful to get to understand a little bit more of what is actually going on in layman's terms. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for joining us, and please stay tuned for more Economic Insight podcasts to come from Insight Media.